Good enough to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, awesome. So I was just
Cool.
kicking it off with a small intro. And guys, anyone who doesn't know me, I run a scale lab. For anyone not familiar with the concept, it's kind of like the counterpart of the venture studio, but for scaling companies. So we basically tell you after a diagnostic what's not working and in which priority order you should be fixing things so you don't, well, fix the wrong things at the wrong time. And my background is what I call 50-50, 50% Fortune 500 and 100, and 50% scale-ups and startups with some of the brands that you might know, such as PayPal, Clash.co, Software, you name it. And today I have a very special guest. I call her my soul sister when it comes to revenue efficiency. Please welcome Monica Stewart, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hey, Olya, thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me on today. I feel the same when I met you in the comments on LinkedIn, like all great friendships start.
Right.
It was just immediately like, who is this woman? She gets it. Why have we not come across each other before? Because I feel like there are so few people out there talking about what you and I both do from our own different angles, the way that we think about it, and the perspective that we have. And so super excited to be here with you today. My name is Monica. I run a company called MSP Consulting, and I help founders of enterprise SaaS businesses scale their revenue organizations between 1 and 10 million ARR. So post product market fit, I help them with go to market fit and scaling. And my whole background is in enterprise sales. It's what I've spent my entire life doing, for better or for worse. So what I love about my work is being able to take this very niche, very specific little piece of knowledge that I've developed on this earth and sharing it with founders that can use it.
You work in the revenue magic, girl.
So
I think most definitely agree with the following statement. For example, what I see over and over when it comes to B2B product founders is this: growth stalls not because people aren't working hard, but because decisions are made without a sequence. Most companies don't really need yet another experiment. They need to understand dependencies, trade-offs, and second order effects.
I think that's such a good way of putting it. Like, especially now, there's more information available to all of us than there ever has been, and there are so many good ideas available to founders, and they all have, I'm seeing more founders do really smart things like, intentionally raise from multiple smaller investors, so they have access to networks and they have access to advice, but that advice is not always good because it often comes from, there's a lot of survivorship bias and a lot of recency bias. So it's like, on the one hand, maybe you've got somebody on your board that's like, oh, I have this really great sales advisor that we bring in for all of our companies. He took 3 software businesses to IPO, and it's like, okay, but he started in the 90s. And the last one was like
classic.
And the last one was like 15 years ago. Like, a lot of things have changed since then. And like 100 million% that playbook isn't going to work anymore. The funding environment is different. The buyer behavior is different. The people that you're hiring are different. They come from a different mold. And then on the other hand, then you've got, and then they're like, and then there's this other guy on my board that's like, hey, insert name of hot AI company in their space is growing really fast. We should be doing that. You need to get to 100 million in the next year. And they're like, well, we're a sales-led company. How are we supposed to do that? And they're like, well, maybe you should become BLG. Like, it's just, there's, and and like, I think the best founders are open to advice and learning and are growth oriented. And so unfortunately, sometimes you take that advice and then you get pulled in like a million different directions because you don't have an internal framework or rubric to understand, like, does this fit into like the problem that we need to solve right now?
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like dangerous out there because everybody seems to know what to do, and they're telling you what to do, although they have like very little context on your own station. And I think I was actually talking to Colin this morning. Well, I guess morning for me, end of the day for him. And we were talking about Alex Hormozy and how, like, some people take him as a Bible. And I'm like, yeah, well, his advice is good for I mean, don't even know who really, but like his whole economics is built on making people feel like perpetually behind, and that's
Right.
just not a good thing. Like that's not how you want to spend your life, and
No.
this reflects what you just said about consultants. You should not be like hiring left and right the most loudest, like the loudest person in the room. You should hire somebody who has been there either as a founder or has been in a similar company before, who will like understand your context in 3 seconds.
That's right. You need someone, I mean, in sales, I always say like you need somebody who has sold to your ICP at the stage of company that you're at. And what's interesting is that I found that in sales, at least, I don't know about other functions, but it doesn't matter as much if they even sold to that vertical, because like selling to recruiters at Target or Walmart versus selling to like product people at Target or Walmart is more alike than selling to recruiters at Target versus selling to recruiters at like small real estate brokerages.
Absolutely.
So it's like you need to think about like all of the components of your ICP. So it's like you need, if you're, B2B SaaS selling mid-market enterprise, you need someone who's sold mid-market enterprise at a startup that's around your stage. And they actually don't need to know so much your industry in sales, is my opinion. I know this is a controversial opinion, but I think they can teach that. So for the people that are listening that don't know, Colin is my brother, and he's also all over LinkedIn now. We're very lucky. He joined LinkedIn in the summer. He's been all over every single social media platform like his entire life, basically, and now he's terrorizing LinkedIn on a daily basis. Trolling you in the comments. That's my brother.
Ollie, if you're listening, that's the person who like potentially offended you, but I think we got that cleared up.
That's fine. He would be like, yeah, that's me. That's what I'm doing. And like he and I have been talking about Alex Hormozy for a while, mainly as like, I looked at Alex Hormozy. It was one of the, I did his like free webinar or whatever. I read like 3 of his books when I was trying to figure out how to build my consulting business, starting, probably like 3 or 4 years ago. And I was like, oh, okay, here's somebody that talks about personal brand and talks about building an audience and talks about offers and things like that. And there's like some pieces that you can take from it, but I don't know if you know his story. He started building gym franchises. So, and he was really successful at that. And even like his,
Oh, that explains why he's so ripped. I always wondered.
Gym Bro, Grindset Gym Bro. And like even his company now, what is it? Acquisition.com, I think. They acquire like startups, but like a lot of them are physical businesses, like not tech companies.
Right, not tech.
So it makes sense, right? Like you've got somebody sitting in front of you, you've got to sell a gym membership. You're like, hey, Olya, let's talk about future Olya. Like, do you still want to be 6 months from now, like not feeling happy in your relationship, not feeling comfortable? Like there's a lot of like fear-based, like that's the fitness industry, right? But like, I think there's a huge miss because when you're selling B2B, like, yeah, there's a component of it that's an emotional decision, but it's really not an emotional decision also because there's multiple people involved. And I think that that's also where a lot of this sales advice that's built for SMBs or is built, I mean, candidly, just for a less complex buying environment. Like even if you were selling, like, let's say you were selling at ADP 15 years ago, 10 years ago, even, you were probably more likely to have a single decision maker on the buyer side, but the buying circle has like exploded in recent years for multiple reasons. And so anyone who's still working on like a relationship model or is still working on sort of like a oh, I'm going to try to manipulate this person's psychology model is like, it's just not going to be as effective because you can't do that in a complex, like multi-threaded org.
Absolutely, as I use a lot of F expressions. Well, excuse my French, but I can literally use that phrase because I am not France. But I think this is, I mean, I could only agree with that. And I think that's why when I also just like mentor founders from time to time, and I usually tell them, guys, if there is anybody who is telling me, dude, I'm gonna like help you double your revenue, I'm like, just hang up. because this is the guru talk, and they're probably going to have you spend a shit ton of money on ads or something like this, and you're actually going to end up losing at the end, because anybody who's giving you promises and like making it sound easy, that's definitely not going to be the case.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And like, I don't, I'm always open to like things working in a different way than I assume that they do. Like I've been in sales for like 15 years. And obviously it's very different now from when I started, and very different now from it was even 5 years ago. And like, I also never want to become one of those people that's like, this is the way it is. Like, I'm open to being wrong constantly. But I do think that there is a core truth, which is that like nothing is free. Like there are really no shortcuts. And I just believe this as a life philosophy, like anywhere in life, right? And you see this right now in GTM where like, yeah, you've got these companies that they went to 80 million in like 2 years, right? Like explosive, insane growth. Amazing, cool. Okay, we don't actually know the unit economics of these companies, and a lot of them just like paid a shitload to acquire a bunch of customers.
Right.
They acquired the customers, right? They got the customers, and of course, there's some benefit to like having that kind of growth, and it puts you ahead in the market, and like it's amazing PR, and it's amazing for recruiting, and like and it creates a positive flywheel of customer acquisition because everyone wants to use the hot product. So like, sure, is it money well spent? I don't know. That's their decision, but there's a cost to it. And then the other thing that I think is really interesting is we're now seeing that a lot of those companies are like plateauing really quickly, because just because you can scale exponentially doesn't mean that your TAM has expanded exponentially. So it's like, okay, cool. You got 10 years of growth in 18 months, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to keep doing that like onward, because there's only so many customers that are available for you in the world. You know what I mean? So that's like another kind of, it just brings, I think, a different set of issues for a company. And I think a good question for founders to ask themselves is like, what kind of problems do you want to have? Like, do you want to have plateauing and churn problems or different problems?
Exactly. And I think I'm gonna again, Ollie, if you're listening, I'm like, sorry to rip off your example again, but I saw a post from a Bootstrap founder on LinkedIn yesterday, who was basically exploring whether or not he should invest into, well, a somewhat aggressive ad spend, and they've done great organically so far. I mean, bootstrapped to I think it was like 1 million, and now he is aiming at 2 million, and it's a well, I would describe it as a like meta layer for testimonial collection from for creators. It's called Sandra. Hope I didn't butcher the name. So my take on that was basically after our banter, which like went kind of viral on LinkedIn, we have actually discovered that there might be an activation issue. But this is an example that I see like literally every single day. Founders wanna ramp up the volume to fix the revenue issue, while the revenue unlock is really sitting here. It's like there's so many dormant users or users who have churned or never reached the first value. It's like, come on, guys, you cannot just like pump jet fuel into Camry. It's not going to go faster because it's probably going to explode. So my first question to you would be, based on this example, which I'm sure feels very familiar, what other like false positives do you see when it comes to sales traction?
Oof, man, this is such a good question. And I see a lot because I think founders at the stage that I work with are like by nature, like Delulu, like they have to be, right? And like they have to tell this really positive story to their investors and to their team and to prospective customers and also to themselves. And so it's usually like when I start talking to them, there's like one story, and then like when we kind of get in and I'm able to get under the hood, I'm like, kind of seems like there's this other story, and they're like, yeah, but we've had a lot of really good conversations. So there's kind of like two ways that this manifests. One is like actual revenue that's not replicable. So this could be like you have pipeline of 60 deals, right? And most of them are stuck in the middle stages and they're not like really moving, but you're still somehow you're still somehow hitting your goals every month or every quarter, because like you'll just like, let's say your ACV is like 30K, and then the founder always has some like 6-figure deal that they just pull out of a hat somewhere, right? Like they've got like these big
Yes,
strategic,
we've all seen those.
they're just like sandbagging on the side, and it's like, we did it again, we did it again, we did it again, and everybody's happy because like you're bringing in the revenue, right? But there's some real issues there. It's like, well, what is your real ICP? And like, what are you doing that's not happening in the other deals? And how many of those deals are even real? So that's one, I think, is like magical hero revenue. Which is great and is really exciting because everyone's like, oh my God, we're closing these big deals, but you can't build a team on that. And then the other one that I see a lot is like overly optimistic pipeline. So it's like, oh,
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
we go to conference and then we booked all these things as opportunities and then they just sat there. Or like, we've got all this pipeline that's sitting there from somebody that we hired and hasn't been there for like a quarter or two, but they have these like deals, but like no one's talking to them and those people don't want to talk to us anymore. So I think like, yeah, being a little
But
bit.
A's are still marking them as like, yeah, I think I'm gonna close them next quarter,
Yeah, they
just
just keep.
because they want to sound good.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also like salespeople are optimistic too. We're also super Zalulu, like we have to be. That's why I get along with the
That's
people that
part
I
of the
work with.
game, yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
yeah, we're gonna do it. But like, so one of the things that I look at when I start working with a company is I look at their like pipeline velocity, and I look at the like the accuracy of their forecast. So like, how many deals are they usually pushing month to month or quarter to quarter? And like, first week, I just go through all of their deals with them, and we usually close out like 40 to 60%. And initially, it's like a really painful process, but usually about halfway through the call, they're like, okay, I get where you're going with this. And then they just like start doing it themselves. They're like, yeah, that's not real. That's not real. That's not real.
Right,
So
right.
I see it really on both sides, like fake pipeline. And then also, it's not fake revenue because it's real revenue, but it's not the revenue that you can build on.
Yeah, the timeline is just not accurate. They might close, but it will not be like next quarter. Will probably be like the quarter after, and you're already going to be like the cash flow. The cash flow is not going to be the same as you imagine because it's clearly attached to that, especially if you're bootstrapped.
Yeah, exactly. And also like at a certain point, that's no longer the same deal. Like you need to close it and then you need to restart the conversation and create a new opportunity. And that's
Exactly.
a weird thing. I don't know if you see this too, but I am always surprised how many conversations that I have with people that have like this, they're like psychologically terrified to close anything out in their CRM because they feel like they're gonna like lose it,
Yep.
they're like the person's just going to disappear into the ether. And I'm like, no, you put it in nurture, but like it can't be here. But it's almost like if it's not sitting in front of them, it just doesn't, that person doesn't exist anymore. Have you noticed this?
Oh, I mean, yes. And I've even had to like coach myself out of this because I obviously have my own CRM, and like the
Yeah,
number of times I kept people in like waiting for the follow-up. And then I was like, you know
right.
what? Fuck it. My pipeline is already good. So I'm just gonna put them into like ghosted or maybe later. For anyone who doesn't know, I use Clarify. It's like
We're just
humble
that.
sponsor post. Really not. I love them. I love that CRM. So if
It's
you're
called
not
Claire.
if you Clarify, yeah, clarify.ai. Really good. I call it my like Notion style CRM. It's just really, I mean, it's probably better for like creators rather than for like full blown, especially enterprise companies. But I've been using them, I think, half a year by now, and I'm really enjoying the ride. But to bring it back, I think to like false positives, the other two that I keep seeing is attached to the ones that you mentioned is basically when like net new revenue is looking great, like they're doubling and tripling, but then once you add the churn to the equation, you're like
Mm.
all of a sudden it's not looking so good. And I've seen founders like omit or ignore it, like literally 1 out of 2 times. But then once you see the full picture, you're like, okay, guys, you need to work on retention. Like you don't need to pump acquisition anymore. You really just need to work on retention.
Yeah.
And oh shoot, the other one, which is I think closer to the first example that you gave, it's like the legacy deals. That's the one that I just recently saw. It's like there's several million in ARR, but most of that revenue is like first time legacy deals that they signed when they first opened
Ooh.
shop.
And
So it's
they're
like
like
literally
really big deals that they're doing a bunch of like
70%
stuff
of their
for.
entire revenue is coming from those deals. So imagine one of them drops, they're screwed.
Right. Right. And they're not bringing on a bunch more of those.
So they're really struggling. Well, it's actually, again, their acquisition is totally fine. Like the pipeline is full, but it's the conversion that really sucks. I mean, somehow I've been really running into this question a lot lately. And it's like people really confuse acquisition velocity with activation velocity. And then activation could be different things, right? Especially if you have a freemium model. That's where things could get a lot more complicated rather than a straight up, free trial to conversion. That's easier in my experience. When you have a true freemium, as in people could, keep sitting on the
To
free
use
version of
your
your
product
product.
for free. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I
How do you
really,
how do you usually deal with those when
I
you see
love
that there's like a lot of freebies?
I don't see it like I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. I like it a lot. I have a pretty good vein of my experience that's in PLG companies. I was the director of sales at Trello, of enterprise sales at Trello, and I've worked with like a bunch of PLG companies since then to like help them layer in a sales led motion on top of PLG. And actually, even like my first real startup sales job was this company called Panjiva, and like we didn't think of ourselves as PLG because that wasn't really as much of a thing
Was the
at the
thing
time.
then? Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, but it was a it was global sourcing, like trade data. And so like the way that we acquired most of our leads is we would just like SEO, make sure that we were the first result if somebody looked for like you know, Bright Century Trading Company toy manufacturers or whatever, we would their profile on our site would always be the first result. And you could create a free account. And so we actually did have like most of our leads came from that, and we would have people at really big companies that would use it for free, and we would play with different ways of capping them so they had to talk to sales or just letting them run free so then we could look at their activity and reach out to them or whatever. But it was actually a PLG motion, and then we layered sales team on top of that. So I'm super into it, and I think that you just have to be really intentional about understanding like what are the characteristics of somebody that should be paying for your product and when are they ready to do that, and also understand that like it's literally just a lead. Like you cannot assume that even the user that signed up even really remembers what your product is, or are they still using it, or are they using it in the way that you hope that they are. If you've got 5 people at a company that have user accounts, don't assume that anyone else at the company knows who you are. So you really have to
Right.
start a lot earlier in the process than a lot of people think. But in a way, I think it's really fun because I love doing post sales like expansion motions. And that's basically what this is, just with people who are paying a very small amount for your product to start. There's a lot of different really creative ways that you can look at it too. You can look at like usage signals, you can look at usage plus external signals. Like there's a lot of different things that you can layer on.
I think that's a super interesting comment because a lot of times founders don't realize that you can actually like upgrade your pricing model. Like you
Oh
don't
yeah.
have to stick to the like say. I mean, usually it's what like 3 different categories, right? That you're selling or 3 different offers, maybe like including the freemium if you are on the freemium model, and then they don't understand that actually you can increase the lifetime value of the customer by simply like adding more things and then upping the price, and that's
Yeah.
how you can increase your overall revenue without really doing anything else.
Yeah, dude, LTV is like the metric, or NRR, like if I had to pick one. And you said something earlier about like these companies that you've been finding that they've got like these big early customers and they've got pipeline, but they can't replicate it. It's probably because the other people in their pipeline, they've like moved to a different stage of the adoption curve. Those early customers were like, where have you been all my life? I already know what I want to do. And they kind of like sold themselves They were problem aware, and they had probably already tried a couple of different solutions. And then when you go from that to having a pipeline full of people who maybe aren't even necessarily problem aware, and you've got to do that part of the sales motion plus solution aware plus convince them that you are the right solution. You have to do all of that. If you're not like intentionally changing the way that you sell to account for that difference in the people that you're talking to, then those deals aren't going to move. And I think that companies often don't consider like how their motion is going to have to change as they move up the technology adoption curve on the customer side. And as you move up that curve, sales actually gets harder. So like, yay, you got to 5 million. Guess what? Like your next 10 million is going to be harder because you're talking to different people now. And that's why like really mature companies, what is it, like 80% of their revenue comes from their existing customer base? Because it's like
Right,
you
account expansion.
you've already found most of your people. And so now it's just like going really deep with those people that are getting the most value from you. And I think that that's also a really interesting problem to solve.
Exactly. And I think at the early stage or even like mid-level stage, it's still very easily solvable with like simple what I call context intelligence. As in, I mean, it really just comes down to asking a user that signs up, like, what were you using before? And it's really two categories, like nothing, status quo,
Yeah.
or competitor. And that's how you know how you can fine tune onboarding and really everything else. Because like you said, if you're talking to somebody who is solution aware, it's one thing. If you're talking to somebody who is just problem aware, it's a completely different thing. You gotta like educate them more, etc., etc.
Yeah, versus people who are not even problem aware. And then it's like,
You
you
probably
have
shouldn't touch those.
but at a certain point you're going to have to, right? Although then that's
Right,
also like,
right.
that's going to be a lot. Your marketing team, it's like,
Right.
hey, social proof, and like, hey, here's where your industry is headed, and having those kinds of conversations.
So if we take the expansion, but kind of like flip it on the head in terms of expanding the team, actually, what is a sign that adding more sales capacity will actually reduce the learning instead of increasing it from your experience?
Oh, reducing like the learning that the company gets about their own sales
Yeah,
motion. That's such a good question. I think it's really entirely the mindset that you're going into the hiring with, and like, and also the way that this person is approaching you and selling themselves is what they're going to do for your company. So, like, the way that you're going to reduce learning is if you're like, I see sometimes like founders have this sort of like imposter syndrome where they're like, we don't know what we're doing. Like we're really not good at sales, and we need to bring in someone who understands sales and is like a real salesperson. And I'm like, okay, but you sold like $2 million of your product, and like those
right.
customers are still there. Like, I think you do know a lot about sales, you know? I get that you don't want it to be your job for the rest of your life, but I think you know what you're doing. And they're like, oh, I don't know. And then like, and then of course, when they attract somebody who's like, oh yeah, I'm, expert, and I'm going to come in and like build this machine and blah, 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 blah. And then what happens is, because they don't have confidence, and they also are bringing in somebody who doesn't want to empower them and work with them as a partner, then they're just sort of like, okay, here you go. Like,
Right.
go do your expert salesperson thing. And then what happens is like a lot of generally not good scenarios, but like in the worst case scenario, you get somebody who's literally just there to try to make as much money as they can, which means that they're going to try and close as many deals as they can, which is going to look good for you in the beginning, but they're not doing it in any kind of repeatable, scalable, maybe even ethical way. And as soon as that pipeline dries up, like they're going to bounce, and you're not going to be able to take any of what they did and repeat it with somebody else, because it probably wasn't that good. Like it was probably just like baseline, like, okay, they're running a discovery call. And also they are not going to take the time to like set anything up. Like the data is probably not good in the CRM. Like they're not thinking about building something for the future. They're just thinking about coming in and closing a bunch of deals. So I think that is really tricky. I think that testing a couple of different profiles of people to hire can be a good thing if you're doing it intentionally. But if it's more like, well, we hired a VP of sales And then that didn't work out. So then we just replaced him with 3 SDRs, and then we closed all the deals. And then like that also didn't work out. So then we hired a founding employee, but he came from SMB. Like, you know what I mean? If you don't like, you need to pick a lane and you need to stick with it long enough to be able to get like some sort of data. And I think at the end of the day, like you still need to see yourself as the chief scientist here running your hypothesis with the people that you're bringing in, but you're like working alongside them and testing and iterating with them. And above all, like you need to be tracking things in a CRM way earlier than you think. Like I have one person sales teams right now that like they don't need to buy our CRM yet, but they built their own in Notion and they're using it. And it's awesome. And there's like no excuse to not do that.
Yeah, I think today CRM market is just really like a super red ocean, and you can really find a product that would be almost like hyper personalized for your use case because there are so many of those out there. But
Yeah.
I wanted
Or you
I
can
wanted to
buy
develop.
one, like whatever it is, just make sure that you have data.
Exactly. So, but I want to develop a little bit more on what you said, basically that the founder or founders should always stay like the chief product expert. They need to have such like in-tune understanding of the product and the market that they can really like easily transfer it to anybody. And then for me, anybody who is selling the product, whether it's, SDR, AE, etc., they should also be like a product evangelist, because if they don't understand what they're selling, what's the
Yeah.
point?
So what do you think is like the line? Like if you were to take somebody who had, let's say, they were in like a customer success role, but they knew a lot about the product, like they knew the industry super well, super technical, versus somebody who had strong enterprise sales experience and understood the buyers but didn't understand the industry. Who would you choose?
That's a really good question. I think it just really depends on your problem, which you need to clearly state for yourself. Like, is our issue the fact that we are missing, we just don't know who our customer is and how they're using our product, versus we know that precisely, we're just really missing frameworks on how to accelerate that. And it's
Right.
always one or the other. I mean, very rarely it's a combination of two, then they're usually screwed. I mean, honestly. But it's like, okay, do you need to take a deep dive into the better formulation of your ICP, et cetera, or are you simply just missing the tactics on how to like grow a bigger pipeline? So then you can choose your fighter, so to say.
Okay. You posted something really interesting a while ago that was like one of the first questions that you ask founders is how much runway they have. How does that influence like the strategy that you put together for them?
Well, that would be, I think, a different answer for a bootstrapped versus VC-funded founder, because obviously VC-funded founders have a lot more pressure that's
Yeah.
coming externally at them. For the bootstrap founder, for me, it's like also emotional attachment, as in, okay, how much money do you actually have left, and how long are you willing to go at it, especially if your traction is like very early, because it will also signal to me like how realistic they are about everything. And if they're realistic, really, how do you say, like, I guess the level of realistic assessment is somewhere
Yeah.
in the middle. It's okay. If they're, like you said, for example, like overly optimistic, I have to lower it to the realistic expectations to say, hey, I know you're aiming, for example, for doubling your revenue this year, but based on all of the data that I'm seeing, it's not going to happen, and you need to be okay with it, and you need to be transparent with the team. Like, sure, it's always better to shoot for a little bit more, but you
Yeah.
cannot shoot for like double of what's actually possible, because then you're going to end up either at the bottom line or somewhere in the middle, and everybody's just going to be disappointed. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
what? Like, what's going to be your next target? When it
Yeah.
comes to the VC funded startups, it's also helping them to like communicate this back to the VCs, to say, hey, here's what we have realistically as the market data and our own data, and at this point, they have to have a lot of data to actually be able to articulate back to the VCs that no, we're not going to, for the hyper growth, we're not going to double, triple, and all those crazy formulas, because we're basically going to just burn through the cash, and likely none of this is actually going to materialize. So it's what, and like you said, there is a finite number of people that you can put into your pipeline in every single market. And then on top of that, you got to understand how your own product is performing today to have the realistic expectations. And then you can sequence all of the experiments from there. You cannot just blindly say, okay, let's just try, I don't know, 5 different things and see how it goes. We all know how that ends.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And like, how often do you find that like they have already kind of thought through what you're telling them, or like how often are they like, no, like that's not going to happen?
I mean, full transparency, probably like 50% of the time, there's a lot of resistance and they're pushing back and they're like, no, 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 that's what we already have on the deck. That's what we have communicated. And then I usually say, okay, well, I guess you have two options. You can continue on this self-destruction journey, and I'm not going to accompany you on that. Or we can sit down together and rework the targets, and I'll help you like recommunicate this to the team and to the investors or the board, whatever they have at that point. Because I think it just really starts there. It really starts there. And as long as you're truthful with yourself, with the team, and with the customers, because a lot of times customers are, I mean, especially if it's like somebody's building in public, they're very open about what's going on. So
Yeah.
you have to be transparent to a certain degree, right? Obviously, you shouldn't be like throwing all the dirty laundry out there. But for me, transparency is the key to sustainable growth. I will never advocate for the classic VC model of like scale aggressively, burn as much cash as you can, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, same. And like the companies that I work with, I think I work with like 50% actually bootstrap founders or like raise one small round and then become profitable. And I really love that mentality, and also like just the optionality that they have, really.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and a little bit more autonomy over their own company. And like, I think one of the things that people forget is like, if you don't have a ton of debt and you haven't created a bunch of overhead for yourself, like, why are you building this company? Right. And like, again, the most of the founders that I work with, like, it's usually because they saw a problem and they know that they can create something that helps people, but it's not like, oh, I need to become like the next Elon Musk, or like I need to like create the next like Google. They're like, I just want to build a really good company. I have a product that's really good for our customers. I want to reach as many customers as possible, and I want to build something in the world. And like, you can have really, really, really good outcomes without getting to like $1 billion valuation.
Exactly.
If you don't have those like downside forces that are like, pushing you to have to do that.
I mean, it's funny that you mentioned it, because I've been recently introducing this in some of my coaching process. Like, I actually talk about like lifestyle design very often now, because this really reflects what you're saying. It's like, what is the type of life that you want to have? And that's what you're doing today actually align with that. Like, a lot of founders that I work with actually like have family with kids, and they're like so head down to their thing. And I'm like, okay, Travis, like, how do you see yourself, the classic 3, 6, and 12 months from now? And is that like, do you think you're going to be able to keep up with this pace 12 months from now? Or are you going to get served divorce papers from your wife? Because like, this affects everything. What is that Top Gun phrase? It's the pilot, not the plane. It's like, you can have the best plane in the world, but if you're a shitty pilot, the plane is going to crash.
Right. Yeah, and it's like I saw
me like all riled up about that topic.
Yeah, no, 100%. I saw that post. I saw when you posted that, and it's like, I'm not a Top Gun fan, so I didn't know that that's what the quote was. I also feel like, you like, I've only ever worked in companies that are smaller than 100 people, and so I've observed this in multiple different ways. And it's like, at that size, like, the pilot is the plane, and like the culture and like the DNA of your entire organization becomes it actually becomes you. It's like
Exactly.
you reflected onto your entire team, your entire company. And so it's interesting that you bring this up, because I always say that, like, I'm a sales expert, and like that's what I help people with, but really at the core of the thing, it's almost like the sales is just a way to like get in and like build like credibility and trust, because what I really want to do is I really want to make some sort of positive impact on the founders that I'm working with, and get them to kind of like unwind a little bit their beliefs about themselves, about the way that they need to interact with their team, about what they can ask for from their customers, like all of those things that are going to like unlock the next level of growth for them. It's usually not the next person that they're going to hire. It's like a change that they make internally that then starts to ripple
Right.
throughout their business.
Oh, I could only second that, it, because for me, like identity work is the most important that could happen with the founder, because they need to scale what's inside this box in order
Yeah.
to be able to scale the company that they're building.
And I see like at certain points, like, you build like something that starts to become bigger than you, and the expectations only get bigger. And like, I always see people go through like periods of kind of being scared of that. And then that manifests in different ways where it's almost like they need to hide from their own company and from the life that they've created for themselves. And so like growth is not linear for that reason. It's always like, you're a little bit over your skis, and then you catch up. It actually is like skiing. And then you're like, okay, now let's try a higher slope. I think I'm gonna
Right.
die. And then by the afternoon of the next day, hopefully, then you feel okay with that. But you need to, there's the experience of feeling like you are way out of your comfort zone, and like it's literally all going to fall apart at this moment, like is part of that growth process.
Exactly. Whew, I think we can switch to the Q&A, because I see a few questions that piled up. All right.
Sure.
Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, James, welcome back. Okay, I think he has a really good question. How do you tell the difference between a temporary dip that just needs more effort and the structural issue that should not be scaled? Ooh, that's a good one.
Ooh. Do you want to take that one, or do you want me to answer it?
I think I have a very short answer. I think it's just really like look into your data type of thing.
Yeah.
For example, if you have enough historical data, meaning like at least 6 months, and you can see if there is like, for example, one isolated event that influenced something. So say, for example, your acquisition has dipped. You have to really segment it out, as in what channel actually dipped in there. And it's usually you can find it. If everything dipped at the same time, yeah, that's a structural issue. Maybe because you stopped like pumping money at something, etc. But if it's just one channel, you can usually isolate the problem before like having to pull the plug on everything. Do you have a different angle here?
I think that I would agree with that. And then I would also say, like, look at like different time scales of indicators. So like if you're like, let's say leading indicator, you're not closing deals. Lagging indicator, you're also not adding new deals to pipeline. The more things that you layer on, the more of a structural issue it is. But if it's just like, oh, we're like, sales velocity is good, we're just not adding top of funnel, and then that's something that you can isolate, and you can fix, then it's solvable. But yeah, if it's two things or more at the same time, then I would say probably deeper issue to look at.
Right. A question from Ishant. Hopefully, I didn't butcher your name. If a founder came to you today saying, "We are at post product market fit, pipeline is growing, but I'm worried scaling will now lock in the wrong operating model," what's the toughest question you would force them to answer before you greenlight more volume or headcount? That's another tough one.
So you have PMF, you claim
Mm-hmm.
pipeline is growing. And then the question is,
They're
how,
basically, so if they're worried that if they simply basically scale what they have today, and maybe they just like arrived at it by chance, that's how I understand the question. Like, will it lock in the wrong operating model? Like, how do you know that you're not locking in the wrong operating model? I guess that's the essence of the question.
Well, I think the right operating model for you is the one that's getting results. And it also doesn't have to be the one that you're going to have like forever, right? Like just like product market fit is a moving target, like it's not like PMF check forever. Like PMF changes, go to market fit also changes. As your customers change, as your organization gets bigger, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say like don't worry too much about locking yourself in, because your model will evolve. That's normal. But what I would say is people think, oh, I have something that's working and immediately I need to scale it. But scaling doesn't mean like trying to 10x it right away. Scaling means you just keep putting money in the
Little
machine.
building blocks.
Yeah, like just, okay, cool. If you have something that's working, keep doing the thing that's working. Don't change the thing that's working in the pursuit of trying to scale it. Just literally like the smartest people that I've worked with that have built the most successful companies, they're like, if I make customized prospecting videos and send them on LinkedIn DM, I get a really high response rate. So I'm going to spend my Saturday mornings for 2 years making those fucking videos until those videos stop working. It's not like, oh, okay, cool. So now we have to hire a team of SDRs and like a video team company and like create AI videos and then send them out to like 1,000 people a week. It's like, no, just keep like, don't fuck it up. Like just keep doing that thing. So based on the question, I'm like, okay, it sounds like maybe you're in the earlier stages of finding PMF. So like, don't stop talking to customers, keep filling up your calendar with sales calls. And then when you're doing like 8 to 10 sales calls a week and like you literally can't fit anything else on your calendar, hire an AE and then start training them to take your sales calls. Don't hire 5 AEs, hire one. And then if that person ramps, then you know that you can ramp somebody to do the thing. Then maybe you can hire 2 and so on and so forth. So I would say like you don't have to worry that you have the wrong operating model, because you're not going to like overinvest in that operating model right now. You're just going to keep doing the thing that works.
I would probably like add 2 more things to that. Usually the question that I would ask the team would be like, how is the team feeling? Because if everybody is feeling fucking exhausted and desperate, you're probably doing something wrong, because it's like the whole thing is sitting on like pure like human force. There is probably an issue. And also what you said, I think is very important, is that it's okay to change things. For example, I work with a company who was really struggling with the self-serve model. And they were like, yeah, but like I was like, you really need to go to sales led and close the self-serve completely. Your product is just too complex. You're like, you're killing all of your leads because they're all churning. They're not getting to the first value, really. They're struggling to discover it. They're like, yeah, but we're the only company who has the self-serve in this market. It's just going to be us like removing this transparency, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, well, or you go bankrupt. It's okay. Like, it's okay to change. It's like the same advice you would give to anyone, like career-wise. It's like, it's okay to change career. Like you can, you should be locked in one thing. It's okay to change as long as you're able to explain it. They at the time already had, I think they were like 1 million in revenue. So I was like, if you want, we can send a word to the current, like to the list that you currently have, saying, hey, we're actually, closing down the self-serve model. We're going to transition you into, I guess, like more hand holding, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's okay. You're not going to lose them. They're probably going to appreciate it.
Yeah, I think those are both really good points.
All right. Ooh, Sarah. Sorry, I got excited because I saw a question from Sarah. That's another revenue queen. So her question is, in many growth stage SaaS organizations, quotas and pipeline expectations are set aggressively to stretch the team. But those same teams are selling on top of manual CRM workflows, dirty data, integrations, and billing frictions. When you see that pattern in early stage companies, how do you coach leaders to balance ambition in targets with the operational reality of their systems, so they're not just manufacturing burnout and bad forecasts?
That's such a good question. So An exercise
But we
that I
kind
did.
of touched upon, you touched upon that with the like overly positive pipeline.
Yeah. So yeah, you have to look at the actual data. And like one of the things that I start to build into all of my comp plans now is like a top of funnel model. So like what is the top of funnel activity that like the salesperson needs to be executing in order to actually like reach those goals? So we do like kind of two ways of approaching the model. But then another exercise that I did with one of my clients recently, which was really eye opening, is I just had everybody track their time for 2 weeks. So like how much time are they spending on admin? How much time are they spending on internal meetings? And how much time are they spending on like actually revenue generating work? And most of them were spending about 40% of their time on revenue generating activities. And so it's so tempting when you hire a sales team. You're like, oh, the sales team, we need to talk to them about product, and they need to be in the marketing meeting, and they need to like write cadences and all of this stuff. But like their time is not infinite. And so it's a really good, I would recommend to anyone who's hiring more people in GTM is do that exercise with your entire team and make sure that you're actually giving those people appropriate time to meet their goals. Like it's not that hard, but if
Right.
you make them jump through a bunch of hoops and constantly introduce new like quick chat and text switching, it's going to be really hard for them to hit their goals. So you need to just like get out of their way, basically.
Right. I would only add one thing to that, which is like where I see the most resistance from the founders, because every time I'm asking them to like slow down, I'm like, we really need to slow down before we can go faster. And they're like, I can't. And I'm like, well, you just really, I mean, the answer is always you gotta slow down for a second so you can actually become more aware of what's going on and like just get out, like you said, get out of their way or get out of your own head. And I'm gonna use the phrase that I've heard from my coach, who is brilliant. You know, my love language is either being of service or promoting good people. Gary Ranking, for those of you listening on Instagram, you can find him on Instagram. So he that phrase, I'm like, it's my mantra every single day. I'm gonna butcher it now. Hold on. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Yeah.
Like that's literally, that's a phrase that should be on the freaking laptop of every tech founder. This is how it works. There is no way of avoiding it.
Could not agree more. Totally. And it's like, it's sad because I know that as we're saying this, like every founder out there is immediately going to think of the counter examples and be like, well, what about Cursor? What about Lovable? What about that? And it's just like, dude, like that's the exception. And like, are you on that? If you were on that path, you would already know. And the reality is that there's, millions of startups in the world, and there's hundreds of thousands of them that have really, really good stories and really good trajectories that are not that.
Exactly. I mean, it's very unique examples, like Uber, Airbnb, Lovable. It's just the market was ready and they were first to market. This is
yeah, and also like basically consumer companies, like consumer PLG. Like it's just
exactly. Ooh, I think we had a really good conversation. Sorry, guys, I know we went a little bit over time. Hopefully, it was still valuable. Monica, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Find me on LinkedIn. I am on there every single day. It's just my handle is Monica Stewart. You can hit me up there. I post daily about all of these things that we talked about today.
And she's just the right amount of sassy. So I'm sure you'll enjoy her posts. And you guys know how to find me. You're listening on all of my platforms. So Monica, thank you again. It's been great. I think there are a couple of questions left, but I'm just gonna send them to you and you can follow up with people in writing.
Yeah, send me a DM. Would love to talk to you guys. Thank you so much, Olya. This was so fun.